Hey everyone, today we will look at reform and mass culture. If you are in A-Day, we are also doing the lesson on labor unions today. You can look at the previous video for that. If you're in A-Day, our warm-up will be to create a name card so I can learn your names. But if you're in B-Day, I've seen you before. So you are going to look at my combination of all of the class expectations that I created for you based on the feedback that you gave at the end of class and your exit ticket last time, and sign that. I am not going to go over anything by myself right now. If you're in A-Day, we will talk about it when you get in there. So once you have your warm-up done, we're going to do these slides on reforms in mass culture along with the guided notes. And then you will do a group analysis of child labor. And then we can look at some intro activities if you're in A-Day or some Unit 4 review if you are in B-Day. Maybe I'll do the review, honestly, for both of you since we are going to have a quiz next time. I'll go ahead and make a slide for that so that it is super, super duper clear. Reminder. Midpoint quiz for all but 2B, because y'all took it with your previous teacher on. It's either gonna be Tuesday if you're in A-Day or Wednesday if you're in B-Day. Unit 4 exam is the 6th if you're in A-Day or the 7th if you are in B-Day. All right. Let's learn about what the progressive movement is from this Mr. Beats video. Write down a definition as we're watching this. Write down a definition of the progressive movement and jot down what types of things the progressive movement sought to change. What are some changes that they're looking for? At this time, everyone should be writing on your guided notes page. If you are watching from home, you can pick up a guided notes page when you are in class next, or you can find it on Canvas and fill it out digitally. A little bit of a cheesy video, but I thought it was engaging.
The thing that's different about a Verbo vacation home, you always have the whole place to yourself.
There was a rage coming up with the Gilded Age. The people wanted change, someone to regulate, to fix society, one plagued by pain and greed, and to make government fair. The progressive era is there, but because exposing corruption, the shame of city precedent, how the other half lives, shows conditions of life you won't believe. Sinclair's a jungle discussing, not a doorbell's guidance discussing, shady tactics of Rockefeller. Welcome to the progressive era, it's a progressive era, President, starting with Roosevelt, square dealing for the 3 C's, busting up corporate greed. But Taft wants to bust them all, good or bad they all must fall. Boomers decides to run, Wilson wins the election. Meanwhile, 6th Amendment taxing it comes, 17th makes the recollection of the senators at last. Prohibition is 18, how did it pass? Women are finally granted suffrage, voting rights no longer a bridge. 19th Amendment is another triumph of the progressive era, it's a progressive era, Civil rights, they don't advance for African Americans in these decades. Washington and her boys can progression. Still the U.S. made the better by the kings of the progressive era. That was the progressive era, and let me know in the comments which reform you think was the most important. Shout out to Julie Swin's time.
Right. So progressive movement is essentially taking all of these corruption ideas that we had during the Gilded Age and attempting to change them. Some of the things that they seek to change, just for a few, are they want direct election of senators, because at this time the senators are elected by state legislatures, so the actual people are not voting for the senators. And they want income tax, so that way if you earn more money, you will be taxed more. From 1890 to 1917, progressives were reformers who attempted to solve problems caused by industry, growth of cities, and laissez-faire. Remember, what is laissez-faire? Hands off, as in the government is not creating regulations. The progressives want the government to create regulations or rules for big businesses. These are some identities that some of the progressives had. Many were white Protestants, that's a Christian faith. Many were African American people, middle class or native born, college educated professionals, social workers, scholars, politicians, preachers, teachers, and writers. Some progressive beliefs included moving away from laissez-faire with government regulating the industry, making the US government responsive to the people, limiting the power of big businesses, improving workers' rights, conditions for poor and immigrants, cleaning up the cities, and ending segregation and Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow? Jim Crow is that series of laws that we have talked about where people were being discriminated against. It was some limitations on who could vote, trying to prevent African American people from voting, typically. What is Jim Crow? This would also include segregation laws during this time period, which we know created vast inequality. You need to be able to compare the populists and the progressives from this unit. The populists were rural farmers. Rural would be a dense or a very spread out populated area, not densely populated, whereas cities are densely populated. Populists were poor and uneducated, while progressives were middle class and educated. Populists were too radical, while progressives stayed political mainstream. Populists failed, progressives succeeded. Based on what you learned about populists and progressivists so far, do you think that you would have liked to be a populist or a progressivist? This is an opinion question. You kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of someone living during this time period, because we don't have populists and progressivists today. You can also say neither if you want. These are the progressive presidents. This is what we're going to learn about after the midpoint quiz next time. But you absolutely have to know that these three people were the progressive presidents. Theodore Roosevelt, the trust buster. What are trusts? Those are monopolies. Those are big businesses. So if he's a trust buster, he's going to be putting regulations onto those trusts. We also have William Howard Taft from 1909 to 1913. He's this middle guy here. And Woodrow Wilson from 1913 to 1921, the last person on here. In the 1880s, many middle-class Protestant Christians embraced the social gospel movement. I think that I might have another version of these slides that I like better. I am going to check for them super quickly, just to make sure I'm giving you all of my updates here. This is kind of a challenging concept. This concept of the progressivists is not going to be on your midpoint quiz for next time. However, it, of course, will be on the exam. So you will prepare for then. Okay, these are the same. So I just want to make sure because I typically have questions within it. I don't know where my questions went, but in the 1880s, middle-class Protestant Christians embraced the social gospel movement. The social gospel taught that to honor God, people must help others and reform society. So people who are Christians started to turn to helping to reform society. The US entered the Progressive Era from 1890 to 1920, when a variety of reformers tried to clean up problems created during the Gilded Age. What kinds of problems existed during the Gilded Age? We've got overcrowding in cities, we've got robber barons, we've got poor city conditions like poor conditions in meatpacking industries, unsanitary conditions in the cities. Those are some examples. Areas that people want to reform include social justice, political democracy, economic equality, because remember there are huge wealth gaps during this time, and conservation. What is conservation? What does that word mean? It means like preservation of the environment. Which area do you believe still needs the most reform today and why? Do you think social justice, democracy, economic equality, or conservation? This is an opinion question, so I'll leave us for discussion about that in class. Social justice would include improving working conditions in the industry, regulating unfair business practices, eliminating child labor, helping immigrants, and the poor. Political democracy would include giving the government back to the people by getting more people voting and ending corruption with political machines. Who is the person you should think of when you think political machine? Boss Tweed. He was the person who ran the political machines in New York. There we go. We also have the economic justice is fairness and opportunity to work in the world, regulate unfair trusts, and bring about changes in labor. This demonstrates to the common people in the US that government is in charge and not the industrialists. Who are some examples of industrialists you should know? Oh, to answer that question, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie, JP Morgan. Those are the ones that should come to mind. Conservation includes preserving natural resources and the environment. Why is this important? Because during this time, pollution is becoming widespread. So they do not want pollution to continue spreading. They're trying to create some kind of regulation here to make sure that the earth is taken care of. What are some ways that we can support efforts towards conservation today? Things like recycling, not polluting, carpooling or using public transportation or walking to places that we need, turning off lights when we're not using them. Government-wise, it could include putting some regulations on industries for caps at pollution or some rules about where, I'm not a scientist, but the quantities and measures of CO2 emissions that they can take out. Muckrakers were journalists and photographers who exposed the abuses of wealth and power. They felt it was their job to write and expose about corruption in the industry, cities, and government. Progressives exposed corruption but offered no solutions. This is an example of a political cartoon that might be created about a muckraker. So this would be the muckraker pushing these ideas, trying to mop them up, expose them, and hopefully clean them with their exposure by convincing people to create policies. Progressive reform began in American cities in response to slums, tenements, child labor, alcohol abuse, prostitution, and political corruption. An early reformer was Jane Addams, who created Hull House in Chicago. Hull House was the first settlement house which offered baths, cheap food, childcare, job training, healthcare to the poor. Jane Addams' efforts inspired reformers in other cities to build settlement houses to assist the poor. Hull House was run by college-educated women. They provided educational, cultural, social services and sent visiting nurses to the sick, as well as helped with personal, job, and financial problems. Which area of reform do you think best describes Jane Addams's Hull House? Social justice, political democracy, economic justice, or conservation? You could fit it into several, so I'm going to leave that discussion to the class. As long as you defend your answer, multiple answers could be correct. Urban reformers tried to improve the lives of poor workers and children. During this time, they created the YMCA, which included gyms and libraries to help young men and women, as well as the Salvation Army, which created nurseries and soup kitchens. Florence Kelley fought to create child labor laws and laws limiting women to a 10-hour workday. You see from this chart here, the percentage of children working dwindles down over time. Many reformers saw alcohol abuse as a serious problem. Temperance reformers hoped that ending alcohol would reduce corruption, crime, and assimilate immigrants. What does it mean to assimilate? That is an important word that you will need to know. Assimilate essentially means trying to make them like the main, quote, main society. Trying to eliminate the culture of the place where they immigrated from and in favor of the mainstream culture of the United States. Reformers Frances Willard and Carrie Nation led the Women's Christian Temperance Union to fight for prohibition laws. This word prohibition will mean banning alcohol. That is a word that you need to know. Prohibition is banning alcohol. Investigative journalists known as muckrakers exposed corruption, poverty, health hazards, and monopolies. What are monopolies? What does it mean to be a monopoly? A monopoly is a big business. So that a monopoly specifically would be a big business that does not have competition. Jacob Riis wrote this book called How the Other Half Lives, which exposed urban poverty and life in the slums. Ida Tarbell's The History of Standard Oil, written in 1904, exposed Rockefeller's ruthless business practices and called for the breakup of large monopolies. The Jungle in 1906 was written by Upton Sinclair, who was a muckraker. This novel portrays the conditions of immigrants in the meat industry. His goal was to push socialism. However, most readers focused on the health violations. This led to the Meat Inspection Act. Why is this book significant? Because before this, meat was basically not regulated at all. So it wasn't safe for people to eat. If you have ever read this book, there are just terrible excerpts of rats in the buildings and things like that. As I said, next time we're going to learn about the progressive presidents in a lot of detail. But here's a highlight. President Roosevelt proposed legislation to clean up the meatpacking industry after reading The Jungle through the Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act, and Roosevelt was known as a trust buster. Remember, what would trust buster maybe mean? I talked about this already. He's breaking up monopolies. He's not allowing them to go unchecked. Well, now you're going to open this DBQ on Canvas. You're going to choose a group of 3 people. My only class where it's going to be assigned is 4B so far. Within your group, divide the 6 documents to 2 documents per person. For 10 minutes, analyze your 2 documents and answer the corresponding questions. Then share with your group members what your passage was about. How did the progressives attack child labor is what you should be looking at overall. What are they doing to combat child labor, to try to stop child labor? There are some more directions on Canvas. You will check over the answers that your other group members have written on there and make sure that you agree with them, add on to them if you feel that you should. Honors, I'm going to have you include a quote for at least one of your questions, defending your answers. Your exit ticket is on, if you're A day, you're going to create a class expectation for me. But if you are B day, I want you to let me know, how do you feel about being prepared for the quiz and the tests, given that I kind of just jumped in halfway through the unit with you? What can I do to help you to become more confident in this content? If we have time, we'll do some intro activities here. Oops. I will implement my other slide. I am going to also have an option for 2B. You will probably get to this activity. Okay. You're going to look at the worksheet at the reading that I put at your table. Complete the reading and answer the corresponding questions on the worksheet. In 5 minutes, we'll rotate. So there are 6 muckrackers to analyze in total. We'll not have you fill out the whole thing based on how much time we have available in class. For the roles, I want one person to be the reader, read the document aloud. One person to be the asker, ask the questions aloud. One person to be the sharer, start by sharing your opinion. And asking someone else to share theirs specifically. One person will be the evidence finder. Find a quote from the text that supports your response and share it with the group. One person will be the reviewer. Read the response that you have written on your worksheet for the group to review. One person will be the pacer. Keep the group on pace. All right. Okay. Looks wonderful. I'm excited to see y'all for this lesson. Thank you so much.